Hey guys, it's Bridget with San Diego Seed Company, and today we're talking about pumpkins. All things pumpkins. So we're gonna talk about how to start your seeds, when to start your seeds, where to put your plants, different types of plants, the ways in which you can grow them up trellises or on the ground, everything you need to know. But before we get into that, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button so you're notified anytime we put out a video. So as per our style, we are also going to be giving away pumpkin seed. So if you want to be entered to win a pumpkin seed pack, make sure you subscribe to our channel, comment on the video, and then sign up for our newsletter, because that's how we're going to announce the lucky winner of a pumpkin seed pack. Now I promise with this video, if you watch it all the way through, you're going to know everything you need to know to successfully grow pumpkins. So let's take a look at some different pumpkin plants that we have growing here. So pumpkins, as you can see, depending on the variety, they can be really large plants. Now, there's hundreds and hundreds of varieties of pumpkins out there, so we can't put them into one little tight little box. They are very different and very diverse. This particular variety is a vining variety, and you can tell because the plant starts here. And what's a great way that he is growing this is he's got a drip emitter, and then he has a little ring around it, which is actually holding in the moisture so it doesn't go down the hill away from the plant. Super rad, great little tip there. This is a vining pumpkin, and you can tell because it goes all the way out, and it just keeps on going. You can see the pumpkins growing along the vine, and we have flowers here. Flowers will continue to open. We've got one that's already pollinated, so that will be a pumpkin, and it keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going. Now, on pumpkins and squash plants, there's actually two different types of flowers. There is a male flower and a female flower. Now let's see if we can find one of each. Oh, look at the bee. Aw, I didn't mean to scare you out. I'm sorry, I know you're busy doing your thing. So this here is a male flower. And you can tell because, well, I mean, not to get into too many details, looks like a male flower. Female flowers, on the other hand, will actually have an immature fruit on them. This one's already been pollinated and it's starting to swell, but that was a female flower. So what happened was that bee that we just saw actually moves pollen from the male flower to the female flower and makes the baby. Pretty basic. Birds and the bees, literally. So when you're growing pumpkins, or any squash for that matter, it's important that the pollen goes from the male flower to the female flower. Now in theory that should happen naturally, just because there's moths, there's bees, there's butterflies, there are insects that are moving the pollen for you. But if you're having issues with pollination, you actually can just manually move that pollen by taking the male flower and putting it into the female flower. So the way that you would manually do that is you would actually take the pollen from the male flower and put it into the female flower. You can do that by putting in a Q-tip and moving the pollen off of the male flower to the female flower. You can also break off the male flower and just put it into the female flower. Actually, in seed production, to get a little geeky, that's how we ensure good pollination on our squash and our pumpkins, is we manually do that pollination. It's a little bit of an advanced step. You don't have to do it, but if you're noticing that you're not getting pumpkins, or you're getting pumpkins that are growing and then falling off, that's a sign of poor pollination. So again, as I said, this is a vining variety, and the leaves are huge and beautiful. Now, just because it's a big variety does not mean that you can't grow it in a pot, in a raised bed, in a small garden. What's most important is that the root base of the plant, so this part of the plant here, is growing in a nice sized pot or a raised bed, and then you can simply let the vining part fall over the bed and grow out into the garden. The vining portion of the plant doesn't need to be in the bed. And actually, if you have raised bed, it can kind of be a waste of space to let this totally take over your raised bed or your garden space. So he actually has his on this back side of the garden, which is a great spot, total full sun, looks beautiful. Now the other really important tip that just will make or break your pumpkin growing is do not overhead water them. You do not want to come out here with the hose and just spray the leaves, even though there's something so amazing about that. It feels so good to see the water drip off the leaves. It actually will encourage powdery mildew, downy mildew, other foliar diseases, you want to do exactly what he's doing here, where you're irrigating next to the plant. I'm sure he's watering deeply and infrequently so that the plant can get really deep roots and actually be more resilient to drought and heat waves. So this plant's going to continue to grow happily and I'm sure produce way more pumpkins than he's going to need. Now let's take a look at a different kind of plant over here. So you can tell just by looking at it, you can see the leaves are different shaped. They're pointier, they're a little bit smaller, and the plant as a whole is much more bushy. And if we go down in here, look at this. This is so cool. So it's a bush variety of pumpkin, which means that the plant is really concentrated on making its pumpkins in one area of the plant. So it's not vining, it's actually producing a lot of its flowers and a lot of its fruit right here. Now on this plant, it's very easy to see, I'll show you what pore pollination can look like. So see this guy down here? I'm actually gonna break it off and show you. So what happens when there's not complete pollination is you'll see this kind of brown look on the immature pumpkin, and then the pumpkin will fall off. That's a sign that you're not getting good pollination. And if you're seeing a lot of that, naturally a little bit will happen, but if it's excessive, then you're gonna wanna go in and actually do the pollination trick where you take the pollen from the male flower and you put it into the female flower. Now, as a whole, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pumpkins on this one plant. I'd say he has no pollination issues. These guys look really amazing. Now, this plant is kind of shaded by this tree here a little bit, and you can see it already has, actually never mind, that's not powdery mildew. I don't know what that is.
Bird poop.
Bird poop. You don't have any powdery mildew?
Always, John sprays with milk.
Oh, wow, okay. Well,
we don't have it yet.
Yes, you don't have it yet. So this plant looks amazing and I don't see any powdery mildew, but keep in mind that powdery mildew is something that you can't not get. You're going to get it at some point in your garden, and typically you're going to get it at the end of the plant's life when it's already given you tons and tons of pumpkins, and it's really a sign that the plant is puttering out. It's almost done. Until that point, if you start to see a little bit of powdery mildew on your plant, the best thing to do is to actually trim off the leaves. So you can go in and you can prune the leaves away. You can see down in here, he actually already did some pruning. And that's gonna do a couple different things. It's gonna allow good airflow here, right? So it's not so bushy that you're just holding in moisture around the plant. It's gonna allow sunlight in, it's gonna allow pollinators in. It's also gonna allow you to be able to see your pumpkins a little bit better because sometimes they can hide. So it is totally okay to do some trimming on your pumpkin plants. You can cut the leaves off so that you are allowing good airflow and trying to manage foliar diseases. The other thing you can do on vining plants is you actually can just top them, basically, and tell them no more. Please ripen the pumpkins that you already have. That's actually a way in which they get those like 500-pound pumpkins. They don't let the plant produce a bunch of pumpkins. They let the plant produce a few pumpkins, and then they will take the vine and they will cut it. If I cut this here, the energy is gonna come to the plant and get concentrated in this pumpkin versus continuing to move down the plant and produce more leaflets, more flowers, and more pumpkins. Very similar to the way that I talk about pruning your tomatoes to channel the energy. You can do that for pumpkins. So how do they want to grow? They want to grow in full sun during the spring or the summertime. Do not wait until October to plant your pumpkins. I know that's when you see them everywhere and you get all excited. It's much too late then. You want to start them in the spring in a full sun location with adequate irrigation. That's going to make a really big difference on how many pumpkins you get and how big and beautiful they are. Now, you don't have to grow your pumpkins in a pot, in a raised bed, or in the ground. You can actually grow them up something. I'm sure you guys have all seen on Instagram the great photos of people growing pumpkins up a cattle panel like this. Now, it's a really cool way if you have a small garden, take advantage of the vertical space and grow upwards so that you really can get tons of pumpkins without covering your garden in the viney plants. Now, a few words of caution here. It's really important when you're doing this that you are constantly coming through and winding the plant around to make sure it grows up. You can see he's using plant clips here. It will naturally try to grab, but that's probably not going to be enough structure or enough strength to keep it when the pumpkin is going to get really big. The other thing is you want to make sure the pumpkin's going to ripen on either side of the trellis. You don't want it to get squished in here because then you'll try to get it out and you'll have to like cut it out, which is a really, really big bummer. But this is a really neat way to take advantage of vertical space, also make a nice shady area for you to hang out in the garden. Once this grows all the way over the trellis, you will actually create a really nice shady spot that you can hang out, drink your coffee, read your newspaper. Actually, I don't know if people read newspapers anymore, but you can hang out in the shade that you created with your pumpkin growing up the cattle panel. So no matter how you're going to grow your pumpkin, whether it's in a pot, a raised bed, up over a trellis, just remember the key things that a pumpkin needs. Full sun, watering at the base of the plant, and you want to plant the pumpkin during the warm season. So for zone 9 and 10, you want to direct sow them in the ground anytime in the springtime, all the way through midsummer. You can have pumpkins that you can enjoy in the kitchen and as decoration. Now don't forget to sign up to win a pack of pumpkin seed from us. Subscribe to the channel, comment down below, and then sign up for our newsletter because that's how we're going to announce who the winner is. Until next time, make sure you keep growing in the garden.